Hi, everyone. And thanks to Karan for the great presentation. I'm Sariel. I'm co-founder of xFind, recently acquired by SupportLogic. And now our engine is the basis for SupportLogic's latest edition, which is ResolveSX. What I'd like to do in the coming presentation is share, first of all, the SupportLogic vision for what an enterprise knowledge Copilot can look like, or will look like, how that plays into our technology, how it compares to other solutions in the market, and how it can really improve on existing knowledge management processes and turn many overlooked resources that you already have in the enterprise into valuable real-time knowledge. And there we go. And as Karan noted, ResolveSX is targeting the answer seeker in the enterprise. And this could be really multiple different people in the workforce. It can be from a customer wanting validated answers to their issues throughout many different people on the team. And when we go specifically into support, really everyone, customers and agents, engineers alike, want a great knowledge Copilot. This is very obvious in a lot of research that's been done. So engineers, what they want is secure, precise knowledge Copilots embedded into their workflow. And we'll get into what that means exactly, but what Karan and Kritika just showed gives you an idea. And customers also want a similar ability to help them self-serve themselves. And this, again, has been really a recurring theme in a lot of research that's been done in the past few years. And really, AI is bringing it to a new level of expectations from what such a Copilot can look like. But when we look into very specifically B2B support, what defines a good Copilot is mainly three things. So first of all, it has to be in the user's flow. So whether it's customers when they're coming in with an issue, or agents when they're dealing with that issue, it has to be right there in front of them and help them as they're working on the issue at hand. B, it has to be adapted to really different types of issues and queries. So it's not just keyword searches as we've been used to for so many years. Really, you want to be able to deal with complex types of issues, to complex types of cases as queries as well. And C, and probably most importantly, is that you want to be able to make use of those internal sources that you have that are really very messy a lot of times. So past cases, Slack, Jira, all those data sources, you already have them in place. Many times they're overlooked. They're not really being used in order to help your customers or your engineers solve the issues at hand. And that's what we really want to have and enable in such a Copilot. So if everyone wants this and we already have this data in place, the big question is, why isn't everyone building it for themselves, right? AI is out there. AI has been available for 2 years now, right? We've all seen ChatGPT and that big revolution. Why isn't everyone going ahead and building it for themselves? So the answer really breaks down into two sides. There's the data side of things and the tech side. On the data side, and again, when we're talking specifically about B2B support, this is really true, it's complex data sources. So as I noted, a lot of times, most of the data you want to have in place for such a Copilot does not reside in a nicely curated knowledge base. Right? Usually nicely curated knowledge bases cover maybe 20, maybe 50% of the issues you're actually trying to solve with a Copilot, while the rest really is sitting in those past cases, in your Slack or Teams, in Jira, and you really want to be able to deal with that kind of data, and that data doesn't play nicely with generic search tools, with generic AI tools, and it requires quite a lot of massaging, and we'll talk about what that looks like as well.
Yeah, great, yeah.
The second issue is the queries. So as I noted, we're not talking about keyword searches here. We're talking about actual issues coming in with logs and descriptions and a lot of different technical information, and you want to be able to deal with those types of queries, not just the simple ones. So that's on the data side of things. And on the tech side of things, so you want to be able to integrate with these dynamic sources, and that's not a fire and forget type of integration. You really need to be able to continuously work on that integration and make sure you're pulling the data correctly, doing the work correctly. Another element is workflow adaptation. So you want this to be as part of your engineers or customers' workflow. You want to be building the correct user experience and UI, and that requires quite a lot of work. It's not just something that you can do offhand. Another two important points are cost and upkeep. So upkeep, I think, again, these are complex types of workflows, complex types of data sources. That's there. Cost, so large language model, the costs there, they are going down over time, but still when we're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of queries yearly, the costs are there, and you want to be able to deal with that cost efficiently. And that requires quite a lot of work, quite a lot of technology in place to be able to do that. So really the point is that many legacy search solutions out there or do-it-yourself RAG solutions where it's the embeddings are taken off of the internet just as is, internet-trained embeddings, those really aren't going to be able to deal with the use cases we're talking about in B2B support. So if we break it down into the actual use cases, what common RAG, as we call it, or vanilla RAG, as I like to call it, what that can enable you to do is work with how-to use cases, how-to chatbots, right? When your customer comes in with very simple issues and you have a nicely curated knowledge base with maybe a few hundred articles explaining how to solve different issues, FAQs and that kind of stuff, yeah, that can do the work. For that, you don't really need us. You don't really need Resolve SX. But when we're talking about break-fix issues, when we're talking about really the more complex types of issues that you have in the more complex types of companies and products, when we're talking about thousands of barely curated articles or where you want to use your past cases in order to help solve those issues, that's when you really need precision RAG. The generic solutions won't really be helping you in those types of cases. So let's get a bit into the technology itself and explain what differentiates us and what we're doing from many of those generic solutions. So it starts really with the knowledge sources. Knowledge sources, again, many different types of knowledge sources, from those knowledge bases all the way over to Slack channels, pulling them. Really the first part of making this work is data cleaning and parsing. So you want to be able to take that data and have the models in place to massage that data into something that can really be worked with in the models that later are going to be working with it. So cleaning it up, removing irrelevant information, making sure obviously that no PII, no personal information exists there. And then, only then, when it's really ready, you can take it over to the modeling and language processing phase. Now, what another big differentiator is our use of how we use language models in our engine. So what we do is, instead of using just one approach, which is many times a lexical approach from past types of search engines, which is more the keyword-based approach, or just using a semantic approach, which uses internet-trained embeddings like we see in large language models, what we do is we combine a lot of different approaches. So lexical, semantic, local semantic, a lot of different of these models into a stack that really what that gives you is a lot of different angles to understanding what is going on in the data, both on the query side and in the result side. And that enables us to achieve very nice accuracy even when our query, as showed earlier, is an entire case or a summary of a case. A summary of a case for us in our engine is a valid query, much like a keyword query is in a portal. And we want to be able to deal with that, and we want to be able to deal with that quickly. We don't want it to require months of training in order to achieve good results. We want to be able to do it, pull the data, and go. So that's another important differentiator. And then comes the guardrails. Guardrails are really a critical part. Again, we all know hallucinations is a big issue with large language models and with AI in general, and we want to avoid that at all costs. How do we do that? So we have two types of guardrails in place. The first is in domain. So we want to understand whether the query that we're getting, whether it's from a customer or from an engineer as well, whether it's actually in the domain that's relevant to the data we have in place. So say, for example, a user comes in and asks the question, how do I walk my dog? We don't want to be answering that question with data from a cybersecurity company, because obviously that's just going to hallucinate and provide irrelevant information. So we want to detect that first, and that's one proprietary technology that we've been developing for quite a while now, is how to be able to detect that. The second, after the in-domain element, is say even if the query is in the correct domain, do we have information in place to actually answer the question? And again, if we do not, we want to avoid answering the question. We want to be able to say, we don't have any information on this topic, go ahead and maybe create an article or ask experts, but we don't want to just make up stuff that doesn't exist. Last, and doesn't appear here, but another very important element, and this has to do with cost, which I noted earlier, is the whole process of passes retrieval. So right before we provide the prompt and the context, if you're all familiar with the RAG setup, so right, we get the context, which is the relevant items, we have the query, and then we provide that as a prompt to the large language model. Please answer this question with this context. Now the context, if we're just providing it with a 3 or 5 page long article, that is not precise enough to really be able to find the relevant information. That's A, but B, it also has to do a lot with the cost. The more tokens, the more information you're feeding to the large language model, the higher the cost, and it's an avoidable part. If we are able to find the specific passages that will power the answer, it's a much better both in precision and in cost. So that's the whole process that we've built in place. It's a process that each data source, each customer that we work with, this is the entire process that we're running on their data, and it's built in a way that really integrates into many different use cases and workflows. Just to maybe drive home another point on the technology side, so this is a benchmark that we ran a few months ago, taking xFind, then xFind, the engine, and comparing it to, again, the vanilla or generic RAG approach, which is taking embeddings, say OpenAI's ADA embedding off the internet, and comparing the precision between them given a few different sets of data. So what we did here is we used 4 different types of data. One is Ember, they sell coffee mugs. Owl Labs sell office hardware, 8x8, and Waters. And what we see very nicely is the more complex and domain-specific the data that we're dealing with, the bigger and the better xFind compares to internet embeddings, to ADA in this case. And when we get to Waters, they sell lab hardware. There, the difference is already almost a quarter. So 1 in 4 questions where xFind or Resolve SX today will answer correctly versus generic embedding off the internet. And 1 in 4 is that's a big number when we're talking about getting answers correctly in a customer service, customer support type of scenario, right? We want to make sure we're getting those answers correctly. 25%, that's a big difference. So what I'd like to do now is, so I've talked quite a bit. Now let's see a few live examples. And what I'm going to be demoing is two scenarios, two use cases. The first is a support portal a scenario. Much like you're all familiar with, you want your customer to come in, ask questions, and get answers. The second is more of a Slack use case. We've connected the same engine to a Slack, in a Slack type of scenario where we want internal workers, engineers, ask questions and get relevant answers. In the portal, what we're doing, it's actually demoing on SupportLogic data. So in the portal, it's our Freshdesk knowledge base, and in Slack, it's using internal GetGuru and Confluence knowledge bases as well. And what I want to show is a few edge cases that will really, I think, bring home the point of the difference between common RAG approach to what precision RAG can really get you. There we go. So I don't know if you're not seeing it yet. So right away. There we go. So as I noted, starting with the portal side of things, so on purpose, I wrote a query here that's a bit long and B has quite a few spelling mistakes. And a lot of the solutions that exist today really are built, as I noted, for keyword searches. They're not really built for this type of length of a query, and really the ability here is to be able to retrieve the relevant items. As you can see in the center, those are the relevant knowledge items to the given query, and B, the other element here is to be able, on the large language model side, which is on the right-hand side, the answer that's being generated, to be able to take the specific passages from the top items and mesh them into a very nice answer to the given questions. Just to read through it, right? A customer comes in with a question: which features does core include? Does it include voice? And there's a few spelling mistakes, as you can see here. But then, by providing the relevant items, even given the spelling mistakes, and being able to retrieve the right passages, we really can get a very nice answer to the customer's question. Now, another example here is, so what I went ahead and, so elevate, right, is also both a verb in English and a SupportLogic solution. And you want to be able to be very precise in understanding when it's serving as a verb versus when it's serving as a name of a product. So when I ask it how to elevate the solution, it's a very general question, but it goes ahead and answers to the point, right? Elevate as a verb. How do I improve the solution? But then when I ask it how to add elevate to the solution, just by adding that word add, it understands that elevate we're talking about the product here, and speaks to how to utilize the elevate the product in the context here, and not just elevate as a verb. So those very specific, very small details is what really is really important when you're trying to utilize RAG, trying to utilize these types of knowledge solutions in your context, especially, again, given complex types of data. Now, moving over to the Slack use case, what I went ahead and did is, again, comparing two seemingly similar queries, but that have a difference in what they're trying to achieve. So I'm starting with a question that's more process-oriented. Customer, coming in from a customer's perspective, what's required to install the iframe in Salesforce, right? The customer or the engineer is asking for a customer here, what do they need in place in order to install the SupportLogic widget? And the answer here is coming mainly from the fresh desk, which makes sense, right? This is an externally relevant question, and we want to answer to that question what the customer needs to do, what steps they need to take in order to install in Salesforce. But then when I move over to the next query here, and by the way, running these queries in Slack is very simple. It's a slash command, /resolve, and you run the question. Here, it looks very similar, but again, the difference is in the details. The question is, what are the system requirements for installing the Salesforce iframe? It's a more technical question. And here, it knows to retrieve the relevant information, and this is where it's really critical to be able to deal with not so nicely curated internal knowledge. Here, it's taking the main information from an internal Guru article, and Confluence and Guru articles. And what it's doing is it's providing the more technical information, more internally relevant information of what's required from our perspective as SupportLogic in order to make sure we can install the widget, right? The requirements versus not what's required, what are the requirements. So again, those little details are really important when you're trying to enable such an advanced type of knowledge retrieval solution on complex types of data. And of course, the more complex, the more it has to be precise. So I hope these use cases, these demos gave you an idea, and really you're all invited to ask me later about like more specific examples or more specific questions on the technology itself. But maybe moving over back to the presentation. So I showed you a demo on the portal and in Slack. The same exact engine can power the CRM assist as Karan and Krithika showed earlier, as well as the chatbot assist. So really, all the different use cases, all the different workflows and experiences that you want to have in place can be powered by the exact same engine. Now, this is a comparison that Krishna thought of that I really like, which is what we see here is a Tesla and a Hummer, right? Both of them are cars. Both of them get you from A to B. But obviously, when you think about it more in depth, they're engineered very differently, and they're built differently for, in a sense, different aims even. So Tesla, so a Hummer, like when you're doing it yourself, when you're doing a do-it-yourself, a build-it-yourself approach to RAG, you're probably going to end up with Hummer, which is, it's a car, it's a pretty nice car, but it's not engineered for precision. It's not engineered for performance and efficiency. What we're offering is a Tesla. We're offering something that's really built for that precision, for the performance and the efficiency, and to be able to work with very complex types of data and scenarios in order to provide that. I think, and we'll end with this, I think a good example of that is what you'll see in the next slide, coming from Vineet, who's VP of support at Cvent, and his experience with xFind. Cvent were one of our first customers and one of our first large customers as well. And they compared our engine to other solutions out there. And they were mainly taken away by the level of precision that we were able to provide on complex types of queries with their type of data in the use cases they needed, which is mainly portal and chatbot. So we'll end with this, his feedback, his thoughts on xFind, now Resolve SX.
We evaluated multiple providers, to be very honest and fair. When we were looking at xFind, we were like, still a startup, are we going to try that search engine? But the results were really astonishing, if I could. We were getting what we needed. We never thought that's going to be the case. So anyway, we started with that. I think what xFind did for us really was three things I could think of. One, unified search. When we're talking about pulling information, we're pulling information from from our training content, from our KB articles, from our community forums. So all of the knowledge could be residing anywhere. So it's actually helping us pull out the right kind of content from there. Then what it's also helped us do really was unified experience for our customers. It doesn't matter where you are, you could still get the same experience.
So as I noted earlier, I invite you all to ask me more questions and hear some more information on this engine. Thank you very much.